So how do you even begin to plan for a future that's decades away? It's a huge puzzle, right? Well, in this explainer, we're going to tackle it by looking at three really powerful and maybe surprisingly connected ideas about managing long-term risk. We'll go from how entire societies make promises to the tools you can use as an individual, and then all the way down to a fundamental truth about life itself.
I mean, seriously, where would you start? Let's begin with the biggest picture possible. How does a whole society plan for the financial future of its people? It's a massive question, but the answer that most places have landed on is a surprisingly simple system that probably affects you right now.
And that system is built on a foundational promise. It's a promise one generation makes to the next, usually through things like Social Security or state pensions. This is really the cornerstone of how modern societies try to handle the massive risk of retirement for millions and millions of people.
This promise is often called a pay-as-you-go or PAYG system. At its heart, it's just a direct transfer of money. You got to think of it less like a giant savings account and more like a conveyor belt. Money comes in from people working today, and it goes right back out to the people who are retired today.
The key thing to get here is how immediate it is. There's no giant pot of gold sitting in a vault somewhere. It's a constant, real-time flow. The contributions that come in this month go right back out to pay this month's pensions. The whole thing rests on the promise that this cycle will never, ever break.
And this really shows the fundamental trade-off, doesn't it? Pay-AG systems are basically making a bet on people, on demographic stability. They're betting there will always be enough new workers to support the retirees. Funded schemes, on the other hand, are making a bet on the market, that investment returns will grow the money over decades. It's two totally different philosophies for solving the exact same problem.
Okay, but what happens when that big collective promise feels a little shaky? Or maybe you just want more control over your own financial destiny. Well, that brings us from the huge societal level down to the individual. And here, we've got a really powerful tool for managing personal risk, the financial option.
Now, this is one of the coolest concepts in finance. An option is all about buying yourself flexibility for the future without getting locked into anything. The magic is right there in those words, the right, but not the obligation. You're essentially paying a little bit of money today to buy yourself a choice tomorrow.
So options basically come in two main flavors. You've got a call option, which gives you the right to buy something at a set price. That's great if you think the price is about to go through the roof. Then you've got a put option. That's the opposite. It's the right to sell at a set price. It's like insurance in case you think the price is about to tank. One is a bet on the upside, the other protects you from the downside.
And every option has the same basic building blocks. You've got the asset, that's the thing you might buy or sell. You've got the strike price, that's the price you've locked in. And really important, you've got an expiration date, a deadline for making your move. All of these pieces work together to give you that incredible power, that right without the obligation, which lets you turn future uncertainty into a calculated choice.
Okay, so we've gone from the big societal promise down to the power of the individual. For our last piece of this puzzle, we're going to zoom in even further, to a really surprising statistical truth about life itself. It's a concept that kind of shifts our view of risk from something we have to actively manage to a force that seems to just converge all on its own.
It's a pretty deep question, right? We spend our whole lives dealing with different kinds of risk based on our jobs, our choices, our circumstances. But what happens at the very, very end of that long road? Well, there's a fascinating phenomenon in statistics that might just have the answer.
It's called mortality convergence, and it's just this incredible statistical insight. To put it simply, it means that while your job or your income might create a huge gap in life expectancy when you're 50, those gaps tend to get way, way smaller as people reach their late 80s and 90s. All those statistical differences that used to define our risk profiles, they just start to fade away.
Think of it this way. For most of your life, the risks you face are shaped by your circumstances, your job, your lifestyle, all that stuff. But for the people who make it into very old age, a different and much more powerful force starts to take over, the simple, shared biological process of aging. And at some point, that shared biology starts to outweigh all the different roads we took to get there.
In a way, you could say mortality convergence is the great statistical equalizer. It tells us that while our individual life stories, our biographies, create very different risks for decades, at the end of the day, we all share the same biological endgame. It's just a powerful reminder that all our different biographies eventually lead to one shared biology.
So that was quite a journey, right?
We've just looked at long-term risk from 3 completely different angles. We went from the huge societal promise to individual power and finally to a fundamental biological truth. Let's just pull it all together real quick.
So first, at the highest level, we saw that risk can be managed collectively through pay-as-you-go systems that are really built on a promise between generations. Then, we zoomed into the individual level, and we saw how we can manage risk personally, using tools like financial options to give ourselves flexibility and the power to choose.
And finally, we saw that on the most fundamental level, some risks almost seem to manage themselves, as all the varied paths of our lives slowly converge toward one shared biological reality.
Thinking about risk from these 3 perspectives, society, yourself, and statistics, it gives you a really powerful way to frame the future. It's a reminder that planning for the decades ahead isn't just one problem to solve, but a fascinating puzzle to understand. So knowing all this, how does it change the way you see your own financial future?